This is our first video that we're doing this year, and it is what is nature versus nurture. So more importantly, why is it important within Pudd'nhead Wilson? Society and slavery within Twain's time, you really have to look at that before we can look at the idea of nature versus nurture. So growing up, Mark Twain's family occasionally owned slaves. However, Twain, as an adult, did not. And this is actually very important. He fought in the Civil War on the Confederate side for about 2 weeks before resigning his commission because he did not know what he was fighting for. So really, why fight in a war if you don't know what you're fighting for? He fought against racial prejudice and imperialism, as we will see through excerpts of Huck Finn and the essay, The War Prayer, later on this quarter. And this is actually racial prejudice, or this idea of fighting against racial prejudice and imperialism, or one nation, controlling another nation. He's fighting against these ideas, and these are things that we're actually really going to see throughout these other books. And they're themes that he really looks at and he feels strongly about throughout most of his life. Now, society depicted within the novel Pudd'nhead Wilson. So the novel was published in 1894, but begins in the antebellum South in the 1830s. At this time, within the novel at least, slavery is allowed by law. Slaves are uneducated, that is, they could not read. However, Roxy was quite street smart and intuitive. Notice that she always had a plan to get herself out of a jam. And within the novel, the characters treat their slaves quite well. We see this in the episode at the beginning of the novel when a slave stole from kind Percy Driscoll, and the slaves feared that idea of being sold down the river to a malevolent slave owner so much that they all admitted that they stole from Percy Driscoll. He ended up selling all of the culprits except Roxy. So now this idea of social commentary, within Pudd'nhead Wilson. So now Twain criticizes both the institution of slavery as well as the emerging Jim Crow laws that were beginning to take place within the novel, or within the United States rather, in the late 19th century throughout the novel. He argues whether slavery and the treatment of African Americans as well as their subsequent behavior is due to genetics or social influence. That is, nature versus nurture, and uses the characters of Tom and Chambers to demonstrate this. So now we have to ask, what is nature versus nurture? Nature can be defined in terms of genetic inheritance and makeup and biological background. So these are all things that are within your genetics. Nurture, on the other hand, can be defined in terms of experience and learning. So nurturing, these are all things that you learn through experience. Therefore, nature versus nurture comes down to the skills and personality traits that one has inherited versus what one has learned through social interaction and experience. So now, how can we put all of this together? This is now coming back down to Twain and the novel. So, looking at the novel and switching the pure white baby for the baby with the drop of African American blood. Roxy believes that she has saved her own baby. However, going many years down the line, upon learning that Tom has gambling debt and other vices, he blames that one drop of blood instead on the possibility that he may have been spoiled, instead of the possibility that he may have been spoiled or other outside influences. Now, unfortunately, poor Chambers, on the other hand, was so innocent in everything that upon learning of his true lineage, he was never able to fit in anywhere. He was not allowed to go back to where he was comfortable, that is, with the other slaves. And on the other hand, he was too uneducated to be comfortable with the white people, where he should have been all along. So he was really kind of stuck, and he was really miserable and lonely. So, what then happens, and what is the message that Twain is trying to say to society through this novel? That's really what it comes down to, using Tom and Chambers and the switching of the babies that Roxy has done. So in the end, the real question is, was it nature or nurture that contributed to Tom's downfall? That's the question that you are going to answer and that you need to now go back and look at. So using your text, go back and locate 3 examples to support your argument. They don't need to be long examples, but instead short examples. Just 3 places in the novel. You can bookmark them, you can highlight them, you can write them down. It's up to you. So your examples will be your homework, and when we come back on Tuesday, this is what we're going to start arguing, this is what we're going to start looking at. So again, in the end, was it nature, the idea of everything that was genetic, or was it nurture, that experience and the experiential learning that contributed to Tom's downfall? Be prepared to argue it, be prepared to support it, be prepared to discuss it.